Titleist's new 2024 GT driver range has hit the internet. However, I have a few questions about the new lineup that might make you question joining the GT family straight away if the price tag wasn't going to. But there's no denying Titleist's dominance in the public eye when it comes to making consistent quality equipment year after year, which means it's very easy for me to pick a pound for pound winner out of their last 4 installments, especially when the new GT range hits the shelf, as a few of these are going to get a lot cheaper. If you had to choose one brand to play for the rest of your life, balls, wedges, all the way to driver, I imagine a lot of you would put Titleist at number 1. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments, because personally, I don't think they really have a weak spot through their equipment. However, before we test these soon-to-be very affordable giants against each other, and thanks to the guys at Replay Golf for obviously sourcing these so quickly at such short notice, I do have a few weak points to address with the new lineup with the limited information we've seen. Firstly, there's a family member missing from this photo, and for you beginners looking to join the Titleist family, I would potentially hold off before you hear this. Ping and Titleist have a 2-year cycle, which means Ping and Titleist like to stoke the fire a year after with a much more forgiving version, and I imagine that's what the GT1 will essentially be. The second point is Titleist has gone with what can only be described as their trademark crown alignment, somewhat off-putting for a lot of members of the public, and we have to go back to the TS version that just had that sleek arrow on the top of the crown, not necessarily off-putting, but at the same time, if you're starting the game, giving that player some kind of reference of where the face is actually pointing. The biggest shock to me was the new GT3 model, with the sole plate being moved from the back to the front of the driver. Now obviously we don't know the reasoning just yet, we can only presume this is to make it lower spinning, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's different, and having weight ports at the back of the driver does give you a bigger allowance of adjustability when trying to move the centre of gravity through that driver head. Now if you want to become a part of the Titleist family but don't want to sell a kidney, I want to give you the pros and cons as well as second-hand price of all of these drivers, so that you can then weigh up those choices as well as budget for the best option for your bag. But ultimately give you my standout pick pound for pound, which I think is basically a no-brainer and you won't regret towards the end of this video. But that choice won't reflect distance, because yes, I'm going to put the same shaft in all of these drivers, but what provides me the most distance today doesn't necessarily mean that combination is going to give you the most distance. Up first is the cheapest option, and a lot of you would think, Simon, surely this is pound for pound the best driver through this list, and I'll give you some reasons why I don't think it is. However, I love this thing, and I've gamed this driver for many years back in the day. Now we will talk about the negatives. However, this is essentially the cross between the TSR2 and the TSR3. Back in 2016, Titleist only had 2 heads. Oh, I do love this thing. They sound great for the year that they actually came out. And after the first hit, I think we're already answering the ball speed question. Now, the D3 version of this driver is very much like the TSR4, and if you are looking for a lot less spin, then that definitely is a viable option as well. However, for this 80, 90, 100 pound range, it's appealing to that more beginner golfer. And to be perfectly honest, even with the negatives, this is definitely my second pick throughout this range. First negative is the sure fit weighting system. So in terms of adjustability, the likelihood of that person still having that pouch in the different weights, there are some of them out there and you obviously have to pay extra, but it's a faff. And I'm not surprised that they upgraded to this kind of model in the future. Second negative is that this is 8 years old. So yes, good value, £80, great. However, lifespan, how's it been treated? potential bag wear marks on the shaft. But for 80 to 100 pounds entry point, these things are still going to be worth 80 pounds in 2 years, 3 years time, as long as the face doesn't cave in. And with ball speed, launch numbers and obvious distance, I'd be stupid not to put this in the second spot. Which brings me on to the next installment. The TS3 came out in 2018, and this was around the time that Titleist definitely went through a whole makeover. But with the prices that are still being demanded for this driver, it seems like a bit of a jump up for not much more. And I'm not talking about performance. Because one of the advantages with the TS version here is that it is the cheapest model, where you get the 4 installments from Titleist, the TS1, 2, 3, 4. But it's more expensive than the 917, still has the funny weight tracking at the back here that everyone loses. And I must state, on other models you don't have this because obviously they're designed to do different things. But this is a pound for pound test, and if you have a TS driver in the bag, by all means you have a great driver. I've got the impossible chance of putting one of these in last place, and because it's not the cheapest and not really that dissimilar to the 917, well, it's not going into last place because it's bad by any stretch of the imagination. It just didn't do enough to climb up the rankings. Taking my wayward shots apart, pretty well hit in terms of efficiency out of all of those. As you can see, no ball speed difference. Which brings me on to this sexy thing, and I imagine a lot of you are going to go, Simon, which one's going first and which one's going third? Well, let me explain my choices for both. You see, Titleist has a very clear progression through their lineup. If you think of the last 8 years worth of Callaway or 8 years worth of TaylorMade, I mean, there's been so many changes, materials, shapes, color schemes, whatever it is. Whereas Titleist, if you look at all of them, they just keep evolving slowly but surely in the background. And I think that's one of the reasons why people like Titleist as a brand so much, as it's less gimmick and more let the club do the talking. First off, I love the face of the new TSR3 and obviously the TSI. I think that's one of the problems Titleist had in the past. It was a bit too bland, a bit too safe. Not to mention, especially the TSI3 and obviously the TSI2, they look more aggressive. That were actually proud to hit, and if you compare these two in terms of aesthetics, there's no question which one looks a bit meaner. Obvious things to note, finding these in decent condition that look good. Head cover very much not in bits, and the ability to get more modern day shafts, which to be honest, I'll explain more with the TSR version in a second. But one of the biggest reasons is Titleist was growing in steam when this head came out. Yes, the TS version's good, and it set the new path of Titleist drivers not looking bland and boring with the 9, 10, 13, 15, 17. But as well as a lot of tour pros using Titleist equipment and obviously winning with said Titleist equipment, means yes, this is more expensive, but I feel like it's just more desirable for all the things that I've said, as well as people recognizing it winning on tour. Long story short, yes, £200, but there'll be a lot of people wanting to buy it off you, whereas a 917 nowadays, you buy it for 80, but you might have to wait a while when you do want that final upgrade. Tiny bit more ball speed from the TSI, but I have warmed up a tiny bit more, hence a few more miles an hour club head speed, hence a tiny bit more ball speed. I wouldn't say this is even any more forgiving than the other two, because to be honest, even with my swing, a real toe strike, a real heel strike is going to hurt you. That's technique. However, the upside of the TSI or the TS models going forward is that they gave you the option of a TSI2 and they gave you the option of a TSI1, as they will do with the GT series. Which brings me my last choice, still selling online retail wise at $549. If I was you guys and you want a brand new one of these, I might just wait a few more months because they're going to get a lot cheaper fast. Now this is going to go in my third spot. However, there's a secret thing this can do that none of the other drivers can. My point is, yes, they're expensive now, but unlike the other versions, you can still go and pay for a club fit. Go and get fitted for this. Yes, it's $549 now, but in 3 months it won't be, and your swing's not going to change that much in 3 months. And it's why I've put it in third place. It's all well and good me saying 80, 100 pounds, 150 pounds, but what head do I need? What loft do I need? What shaft do I need? Only one you'll be able to do it with, but it is going to be more expensive than all the others. And as I'm showing here with the numbers, well, there's hardly any more difference between, well, all of them. These are my two standout picks because this is your entry point, and then I feel like this is going to give you the most options, shaft, choices, condition, performance, even though we've kind of said there's not really much difference between all of them. And even with the TSR dropping price in the future when the GT comes out, at the moment, I think this is still pound for pound the best driver that you can get from Titleist in 2024. Guys, if you've got any questions on your golf bag or golf game, sasgolfacademy.com. I'll catch you guys later.